our ever-loving Father, the core of every reason, the source of truth. You who made the earth and the heavens are the ultimate goal of every knowledge seekers, the infinite wisdom, the cause of all that is good. We are truly grateful for this opportunity to gather together as a community despite the challenges we face each day. Yet you remained and gave us strength to carry on the responsibilities of bearing intelligence and using them for better purposes. We now humbly ask you to join us in our endeavor to explore the wonders of life in the world for knowledge's sake, that in whatever we learn today, we become more grounded to you, who is truth, who is love. We pray that you bless our speakers, the fount of your infinite knowledge, that they can share something worthwhile despite the limited time we have. They can channel all they know and share to us the beauty and truth of living as your child. We pray that you guide our participants, the seekers of your boundless knowledge, that they may continue to persevere in the search and be deemed worthy to share what they learn from today's session. Sanctify us, O Lord, not because we are worthy of it, but because we believe in your love and mercy, that at the end of the day, we can take home something that's amazing and meaningful. This we ask and pray through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang magiliw, kaya sa silanganan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyagan ng magiting, sa mandulupin, di ka pasisingil, sa nagalang tutok sa simoy at sa langit mo pagkaw, ay hinatang tulagaw,
Once again, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our training workshop entitled The Journey of Health Research Survey Data to Analysis. I believe that this workshop is very timely and relevant for us, especially now that we are already in our data gathering procedure in our researches. And I'm sure that after this event, we will surely be equipped with knowledge and skills on the basic statistical methods and the analyzations of our data. And also, we are currently live in our YouTube channel. So please encourage your classmates who weren't able to attend here in our Zoom meeting. The link for our YouTube live has been forwarded here in our Zoom chat box. You could check it out and send it to your friends and classmates. Thank you so much. To kick off this morning's program, we are pleased to have our very own College Dean, Ma'am Dorina Sabatin, for her welcome remarks.
Okay. To our Director of Research, Dr. Julius Capili, to the members of the Corps of Instruction of the CSU College of Allied Health Sciences, to our dear students, good morning. Research has been for a long time a foundation for virtually everything. Mankind may not have evolved had it not been for research. Innovations in science and technology that made the lives of everyone more comfortable may not have prospered if it had not been for research. Relative to our field as medical technologists, respiratory therapists, and public health practitioners, there would not have been breakthroughs in medicine and in health in general if there have been no researches conducted. As members of the healthcare sector, which is responsible for the maintenance and promotion of health of the people in the community, we cannot discount the value of research in our persistent attempt to achieve a more healthful and safer place to live in, especially in this very challenging and extraordinary time. Particularly in this time of pandemic, health strategies, including the crafting of health policies, should always be based on evidences. This means that all actions and decisions that we make to improve the quality of life of every member of the community through health should be research based, that is, anchored on sound research results. For example, when health policymakers mandate double masking as one way to combat the etiologic agent of COVID-19, the first question that they should answer is double masking grounded on scientific basis? Another example is on the use of face shields. The question there is, can face shields really protect the human body from airborne infections like COVID-19? Of course, we cannot answer these questions without being backed up by credible researches. Those are just pieces of events that give us the picture on how significant research is in the field of health and medicine. Also, as members of an academic institution and an SUC, we do eat research for breakfast. It's the playground of our research director, Dr. Julius Capili. If we would ask ourselves, are we an effective teacher? Or to what extent do we impart knowledge to our students? Obviously, it would be too difficult for us to answer these questions if we do not conduct researches. This explains why we do performance evaluation every semester where you, your supervisors, your colleagues, and your students rate you as teachers through questionnaire surveys. Surveys are one example of a research instrument that we utilize to get to the answers that we need. Information or data are virtually just anywhere. But these data cannot just transform themselves to become of significant value if we do not apply them in research undertakings. Say, for example, results of surveys coming from students during an evaluation cycle is of no bearing if your administration will not treat these data into something that will bear an interpretation or meaning. The grades of our students will merely remain in our class records if your teachers will not treat them accordingly and draw up interpretations and conclusions out of these data on their hands. This is the very reason that I am very much thankful to the research team of this college, headed, of course, by our college research coordinator, Professor Jinky Marie Tichua, and the ARDET of this university for coming up with this kind of event, training workshop on the journey of health research survey data to analysis. With this kind of undertaking, we expect that our faculty members and students will be re-enlightened on the use of statistical tools and methodologies which are necessary to extract the correct interpretation of research data that they have. With this activity, I enjoin everyone that we bring back the culture of excellence and the passion of doing research in our college, despite the tremendous challenges that we are all facing right at this moment. With that, thank you very much, and I wish you a very fruitful day as we all partake together the knowledge shared to us by our very competent resource speakers. Thank you and mabuhay.
Thank you so much, Mom Dorina, for that encouraging message. To share to us the rationale for this two-day workshop, may I call on our very esteemed University Research Director, Dr. Julius T. Capili.
Thank you, Claire, and I hope I am audible. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to my family at the College of Allied Health Sciences. Good morning, dear students of the Respiratory Therapy, Public Health, and Medical Laboratory Science program. And I am happy to be back, no? And this time invited, no, as a individual to actually make use of my expert staff in order to bring you into the realms of statistics. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to first greet the very motherly Dean of the College of Allied Health Sciences, Professor Dorina Sabatin, and of course to the very able college research coordinator, Professor Jinky Marichua, and all other of department chairs and faculty members who are with us today. My dear friends, no, and colleagues, no, as well as of course students, I wish, no, to inform everyone that of course in this world everything is imperfect, and if everything should have had been perfect and everything should have had been known by everyone, then there's no need to research. Apparently, that is not the case. And of which case, no, we certainly, no, need a lot of individuals in order to share to us about their expertise. And this time we have Mr. Artilada, a graduate of the University of the Philippines, and our university statistician, one of the powerhouse, no, of the research department, which I currently head now. And of course, I hope that you will be having a wonderful time with him. Now, the purpose of this training is for us to be able to capacitate not only students, but as well as faculty members, because you have a crucial role, not just but in building an environment which is to enable us to strive and to thrive, no, with less of stress and less of problems, as Lindorina have had reiterated a while back. And of course, capacitation is the key, as I've always been reiterating. So the first initiatives, no, the first of the initiatives I've had as the university director for research is to look into the needs, no, of students and faculty, and we have started, no, with a lot, no, of activities. For example, we have the basic research methods training in health. We have also activities which are focused on product development trainings, no, in the other campuses, as well as reviving, as well as sustaining, no, our research centers. And my dear students, you have to remember that statistics happen to be the weakness of everyone in research, even your faculty members. I doubt, no, whether all of them have really understood what statistics is about. You start with your sampling design, no, because it has effect obviously on the statistical designs that you will be using, so and so on and so forth. So remember that since we are talking about the statistics here, no, this statistics actually gives value to our research. In fact, no, while the research objectives are there, what gives meaning to the research are actually our statistics. So data gathering tool should be mastered by the construction of data gathering tool should likewise be mastered by everyone, and we should really come up with good data gathering tool, because it will be as good or it will be a reflection of your data analytics or the things that you will be bringing out in the research. So I admonish everyone to do research rightly. We are actually breaking things to you very slowly, and of course, since I said this is one good topic of interest that everyone should be calibrated and capacitated on. And I hope that with the able speaker we have, everything will definitely come into you smoothly. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for gracing this activity. I hope it will be a very wonderful training workshop on health research survey data to analysis for everyone. God bless.
Thank you so much, Director. I believe that somehow we are enlightened to the objective for today's um, workshop. And of course, before we proceed to our webinar this morning, it is vital for us to know who would be this person who will instill knowledge and hone our skills for our data analysis journey in our researches. To introduce our resource speaker for this morning, may I call in our ever gorgeous college research coordinator, Professor Jinky Marie T. Chua.
Thank you, Claire. It is my pleasure to introduce our resource speaker for today. He is currently the University Statistician of Cagayan State University. He is also a representative of the Ethics Review Committee of the Cagayan Valley Health Research and Development Consortium, a bachelor's degree in statistics graduate of the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Please welcome Mr. Arman Louis Arquilada.
Good morning, Sir Arman.
Good morning, Sir Arman.
Sir, nakaka-mute po kayo. Sir Arman.
Okay na po.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, sir.
Ma'am.
Yes.
Good morning, Ma'am Jinky, and dating lahat po, Sir Julius, and to our dean. Today, first, I would like to again greet you. Good morning sa ating lahat po. And today, I hope that we are all safe and sound, lalo na kayong under ulit tayo sa ECQ. So, may we divert our boredom into a happy, interesting, and fruitful day by discussing the importance of statistics in health research. Ma'am, naka-share na po ba, ma'am? Okay.
Yes, sir. Vic, mag-share screen, mag-share si sir. Okay na po, sir.
Okay na, ma'am. So again, our this research or workshop training is all about the journey of health research, survey data to analysis. Now first, this is one of my questions when I was a college student. And I think isa ito sa magbibigay sa atin ng idea about the importance of statistics. Isa sa lagi kong question dati is, what's the difference between mathematics and statistics? Kasi all I know about statistics before is tatlong measurement lang, or these are mean, median, and mode. And I thought these are simply related with mathematics. Now, dahil masyado akong curious dito, nag-conduct ako ng mga researches, well actually from internet lang naman. So dito, nalaman ko na may significant difference with mathematics and statistics. So in mathematics, this is a deductive way of reasoning, while statistics is an inductive process of reasoning. So in mathematics, For example, we have a social phenomenon, and in statistics, we also have a social phenomenon that is observed. In mathematics, we deal with this by a theory that is developed to explain why it occurred. And in statistics, ito yung part na nagpapakita ng importance ng statistics because statistics deal with real life phenomena. So it deals with real world phenomena. Data is collected on the possible reasons why it occurs and trends in the data that are examined. In mathematics, a theory is tested through research and the theory is either accepted, rejected, or revised. In statistics, a theory is developed from this data to explain the social phenomenon. So a simple comparison is, for example, in mathematics, if A is equal to B and B is equal to C, therefore, we can say that A is equal to C. This is so because in mathematics, when we say, or when we use the symbol equal, we always say that it refers to the mathematical equivalence or the principle of mathematical equivalence, which states that the two sides of an equation represent the same value. So if we are to give an example values, if A is equal to 1, and then we say that A is equal to B and B is equal to C, and therefore A equals to C. So mangyayari dyan, since A is equal to 1, definitely B is equal to 1 and then A is equal to C. On the other hand, sa transitive paradox of statistics, if A and B are not significantly different, and if B and C are not significantly different, is A not significantly different from C? In this case, we cannot directly state that A and C are not significantly different from each other unless we conduct data gathering and analyze using appropriate statistical analysis. So, for example, we have 3 breeds of dogs. A is equal to K9, B is a crossbreed of K9 and Pug, and C is a Pug. With this, there is a chance that there is no significant difference between A and B. Kasi nga, yung A is K9 and B is a crossbreed of K9 and Pug. Also, there is a chance that B and C has no significant difference since there is also a similarity between these two. Since B is, again is K9, is a breed of K9 and Pug, and C is Pug. Now, on the other hand, can we also say that there is no significant difference between A and C or between K9 and Pug? Well, to prove this statement, we must conduct data gathering that can provide us valid conclusions on the stated hypothesis. Now, gaya nga nung nasabi ni Sir Julius kanina, there is no perfect in this world. So dito, since we are dealing with real life phenomenon, we cannot expect a perfect answer, a perfect inference, or a perfect conclusion. But we can have a reliable conclusion by conducting, or if you conduct appropriate process and statistical analysis.
Excuse me po, sir. Sir
Yes, ma'am.
Arman.
Yes,
Sir,
ma'am.
okay lang po if medyo lakasan daw po, medyo may na daw po yung audio niyo, sir.
Sige po.
Thank you,
I-short
sir.
na lang.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Hello, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Okay na po, sir.
Okay na.
Thank you po.
So next is, I would like to remind you of the word appropriate. In researches, sorry.
Hello, sir. Sir, nawala po yung audio niyo po, sir.
Hello po. Okay na ba, ma'am? Hello? Hello, ma'am?
Sir, wala pa pong marinig, sir.
Okay na po ba, ma'am? Hello? Hello, ma'am? Hello? Hello po.
Hello, sir.
Okay na ba?
Hello, sir. Yes, sir. May audio na, sir, pero mahina lang po, sir.
Try ko lang itong ano. Hello?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay po. So again, I would like to remind you of the word appropriate. Gaya ng sabi ko kanina, kailangan natin ito para magkaroon tayo ng appropriate plan. Because research is a process and we must have a plan, an appropriate plan. So what are the what are the different types of variables? This part is one of the most crucial parts in statistical analysis and in the research itself. Why? Kasi dapat nating i-identify kung ano ba yung mga appropriate variables para pagdating sa ating statistical analysis and statistical or data gathering, alam natin paano natin siya i-tabulate and we can determine the appropriate statistical analysis that must be used. So what are the different types of variables? First, we have categorical. This describes qualities of the objects of interest. Next is numerical. It describes quantities of the objects of interest. Under numerical, we have discrete or counted items, and continuous are measured characteristics. Now, there are different levels of measurement under this two categorical or under the different types of variables. First, under the categorical variable, we have nominal and ordinal. For nominal, it is the lowest level of measurement. It is information that can be obtained from processing data is limited to frequency counts and percentages. And lastly, it has no intrinsic ordering. For example, gender, civil status, and civil status. Now, ang point here is we can have choices, but with these choices, equal lang sila. So we can choose one of these. And for example, sa gender, we have male and female. Definitely, hindi lamang ang male sa female. And hindi rin lamang ang female sa male. These are just two choices. Ganon din sa civil status. Hindi naman lamang ang single sa widow and hindi rin lamang ang widow sa single. On the other hand, in ordinal, it consists of categories with inherent ordering. Two, information that can be obtained from processing data is limited to frequency counts with additional insight on the rank or order of the categories specified. So ito yung difference ng ordinal sa nominal. In ordinal, we consider rank or orders of the categories specified. For example, socioeconomic status. We can have low, middle, high. We can also have student classification. Nakikita rin natin to usually in social researches where we usually make use of the Likert scale. For example, 5-point Likert scale. We usually define it as 1, very low, 2, low, 3, medium, 4, high, and 5, very high. So ibig sabihin, habang nag-i-increase yung yung choices natin ay may weight. So from 1, which is very low, tumataas siya pag pumunta tayo sa 2. Tapos pag pumupunta rin tayo sa 3, mataas naman ang 3. Sa 4 naman, mas mataas ang 4 sa 1, 2, and 3. And lastly, 5 is the highest. For continuous variable, we have two types. We have 2 levels of measurement. We have interval and ratio. For interval, these are quantitative variables with differences between two consecutive quantities being constant. Intervals between categories can be quantified and have meaning, distinguished as having no true starting or 0 point. So example, room temperature and IQ score. So for room temperature, we can have an interval of 0 degrees Celsius up to 10 degrees Celsius, and we can classify it as very low or very low temperature. So, but ang difference nito sa categorical variables is that we can have any value between this interval. So, if nominal and ordinal has limited as choices, in interval value or interval level of measurement, we can have any value between this interval. So for example, meron tayong 0.1. Now, if we have 0.1, since it belongs to the low level of or the lowest temperature, we can say that this is a low temperature value. So ibig sabihin, in short, to make it short, we can have a decimal place, not only whole number, but we can have a value with a decimal place. But they are grouped by intervals. Now in ratio is highest level of measurement. It has all the characteristics of a variable in the interval scale in addition to having an absolute 0 point. So for example, age at last birthday in year, weekly food allowances, height, and weight. So actually dito sa ratio, parang pares lang siya with interval. It can have any value that, it can have full number, it can have values with decimal places. But the difference with interval is that in ratio, wala tayong grouping. Wala tayong intervals na kino-consider. And then lastly, for discrete, again, discrete is a type of numerical value or variable. Now, discrete is countable, nothing in between. Again, para din siyang categorical variables, but this time we just have to count the number of a certain unit of a certain variable. So for example, number of oranges in a bag and number of clothes. So simple, as stated, this is countable. Bibilangin lang natin kung ilan yung oranges in a bag. And definitely, we cannot have value with decimal place. So now, may we move on to our submodule or first submodule, and this is the qualitative versus quantitative studies. So for the learning objectives, by the end of the session, the learner must be able to first differentiate between quantitative and qualitative studies. Second, describe the basic study designs in qualitative research. Third, provide examples of research objectives which can be addressed by the various study designs in qualitative research. Fourth, identify important guidelines in conducting key informant interviews and focus group discussions. And lastly, define the meaning of mixed method research. So, what are the difference between quantitative and qualitative studies? So for the general framework, quantitative usually seeks to confirm hypotheses about phenomena. Instruments use more rigid methods of eliciting and categorizing responses to questions. It makes use of highly structured methods of data collection such as questionnaires, surveys, and structured observation. For qualitative studies, it seeks to explore phenomena. It uses instruments instruments use more flexible, iterative style of eliciting and categorizing responses to questions. It uses semi-structured methods such as in-depth interviews, focus group discussions, and participant observation. For the analytical objectives, quantitative studies seeks to quantify variation. It seeks also to predict causal relationships and describe characteristics of a population. For qualitative studies, seeks to describe variation, describe and explain relationships, describe individual experiences, and to describe group norms. So for the question format, for quantitative studies, it is close-ended, and for qualitative, it is open-ended. So ano nga bang difference ng close-ended and open-ended? So sa quantitative, since we want to gather limit or exact values, so we can give here, we usually make use of questionnaires. So usually, when we use questionnaires, there are just limited questions. Kasi nga, limited lang naman yung gusto nating malaman. So may hindi siya yung or kumbaga, limited lang yung ating gustong data na i-gather based dun sa objective na ating study. Now, in qualitative, since we want to explore phenomena, this is an open-ended, we make use of open-ended question format. This is because we want to make clarifications and we want to interview someone that is of interest of this study. So for example, pupunta ka sa isang tribal group or sa isang group of indigent people, then if you want, you cannot really, you may interview them instead of giving them questionnaire for them to describe their lifestyle on their place. So that is the difference in terms of question format between quantitative and qualitative studies. For the data format, quantitative is numerical. It is obtained by assigning numerical values to responses. On the other hand, qualitative is textual. It is obtained from audio tapes, video tapes, and field notes. For the method of sample selection, quantitative makes use of a representative sample selected through the application of a probability sampling design. When we say probability sampling design, we make use of or we must consider each and every one of the population to have an equal chance of being a part of the sample. So ibig sabihin, dyan papasok ang ating concept about randomization. So we must give them equal chances to be part of the sample. On the other hand, when we deal with the qualitative studies, it makes use of non-probability sampling designs, usually purposive, quota, and snowball sampling. So in short, we don't really need to randomize since this is a non-probability sampling. So we can conduct it in purposive way. So pwede nating piliin yung ating magiging respondents based dun sa kung ano man or yung mga related lang dun sa ating studies. Next, for the external validity, under quantitative, results based on samples can be generalized to the target population with known reliability levels and margins of error. For qualitative studies, limited ability to generalize results to a larger population, reliability levels cannot be computed. For data analysis, under quantitative studies, information collected is classified according to predetermined categories. So this is a deductive process. It is something quantifiable, can be represented in numerical tables and analyzed statistically. For qualitative studies, information is classified into categories which are identified in the data itself through an inductive process. Extensive, descriptive, cannot be succinctly presented. Interpretation is more subjective. So, what are the commonly used methods of data collection in qualitative research?
Sir, nawala po yung share screen po.
Sige ma'am, I'll check it. Okay na po?
Yes po, sir. Okay na po.
So, what are the commonly used methods of data collection in qualitative research? So first, in-depth interviews or key informant interviews. This is a technique designed to elicit vivid picture of the participant's perspective on the research topic. It is a useful and effective method to use when the objective is to elicit individual experiences, opinions, feelings, as well as when addressing sensitive topics. Subjects or respondents of an in-depth interview are purposefully selected based on their position or specific characteristic, which makes them the best source of information regarding the topic being considered for the research. They are usually conducted face-to-face and involve one interviewer and one participant. Phone conversations and interviews with more than one participant also qualify as in-depth interviews. On average, in-depth interviews last from 1 to 2 hours. Next is the focus group discussion. A focus group is a qualitative data collection method in which one or two researchers and a number of participants meet as a group to discuss a given research topic. The focus group consists of a small, around 8 to 12, of relatively similar individuals who provide information during a directed and moderated interactive group discussion. Focus group participants are typically chosen based on their ability to provide specialized knowledge or insight in the issue under study. Focus groups are especially effective for capturing information about social norms and the variety of opinions or views within a population. The richness of focus group data emerges from the group dynamic and from the diversity of the group. Participants influence each other through their presence and their actions to what other people say. Because not everyone will have the same views and experiences because of differences in age, gender, education, access to resources, and other factors. Many different viewpoints will likely be expressed by participants. For mixed method research, it uses a combination of quantitative and qualitative approaches in the conduct of this study. It usually used when the research has several objectives requiring either different type of research designs to address them or different types of respondents. So for example, of different research objectives and corresponding research design to utilize to address them. Research, for example, research objective is to determine the directions which the EPI in the province will be taking given accomplishments achieved and constraints faced by the program in the previous year. So for the respondent, you would consider policymakers like the provincial health officer. Next is for the mode of data collection, we make use of the key informant interviews. That is because the type of research is qualitative. Second, to determine the coverage of EPI in the province and to determine the facilitating and inhibiting factors in the implementation of EPI in the province. For the respondent, we may consider, we should consider the program manager for the provincial EPI and program manager. For the mode of data collection, we will have to consider key informant interviews and records review. And for the type of research, we will use qualitative and quantitative type of research. So next is to describe the strategies which nurses, midwives, and BHWs found most effective in convincing mothers to have their babies immunized. So the respondent for this study or objective would be the service providers, nurses, midwives, barangay health workers. For the mode of data collection, we will have to make use of the focus group discussions to be conducted separately for each type of service provider. And therefore, this is a qualitative type of study. Next is to determine the percent of fully immunized children or FIC in the province and to determine the reasons why mothers agree or don't agree to have their babies immunized. So the target beneficiaries would be the mothers and infants. So for the mode of data collection, personal interview of randomly selected baby mothers and the review of babies' immunization card. Type of research will be quantitative or the cross-sectional study design. Okay, so that would be all for the submodule 1. So next, I will now move for the second module. And this submodule 2 is all about the sample size determination. So the for the learning objectives, by the end of the session, the learner must be able to determine when it is appropriate to compute for the adequate sample size for a given study. Second, identify important factors to consider in sample size determination. Third, enumerate the information needed for sample size determination when estimating a mean or a proportion. Fourth, compute for the sample size for studies which aim to estimate a proportion using some simple random sampling and determine how to address common issues in sample size determination, like estimating a proportion whose value is unknown, the use of complex sampling designs, sample size adjustments for non-response, and others. So there are different types of probability sampling technique. So first is the simple random sampling. It assigns equal chances of selection to all possible sample size of n that may be formed from the universe, may be taken with replacement or without replacement. So usually yung ginagawa dito from a population, kahit na ilan kung meron bang for example in a certain barangay which consists of different purok. Now, ginagawa natin dyan, we don't have to divide them by purok. We must deal with it as one barangay. So gagawin natin dyan, lahat ng possible respondents, lahat ng mga tao dyan can be a part of the sample. But we must conduct a randomized sampling method to be able to have a probability sampling. Next is the stratified random sampling. Considers mutually exclusive subdivisions or called strata that may exist or may be constructed from the universe. For greater efficiency, units with stratum should be as homogeneous as possible, while the units belonging to different groups should be as heterogeneous as possible. So going back to my example kanina sa simple random sampling. Sa simple random sampling, we must not group them or we must not consider any grouping factor. So gaya ng sabi ko kanina, there is a certain barangay with different purocks. So dito, we want to compare the different purocks. So we must group them according to this using the grouping factor that which is the purok. So now in here, the within stratum should be as homogeneous as possible. So ibig sabihin, there is a similarity within that part or within a certain group. While the units belonging to different groups should be as heterogeneous as possible. So ito yung nagbibigay ng sense kung bakit natin kailangan group sila. Kasi nga, merong significant similarity on a certain group, and if you are to compare the different groups, there is a significant difference naman sa kanila. Kasi may kanya-kanya silang characteristics within and among the other groups. Here, we have two types of allocation scheme. First is equal allocation. Number of units that will be selected from each stratum is equal. It does not consider the size of each stratum. Now, sometimes in researches, pag nag-group tayo, mapapansin natin there are groups with higher number of population. Now, pag nag-stratify tayo, syempre, di natin maiiwasan na lahat or yung mga groups natin ay pantay-pantay yung population size niya. Now, since we want a sample size na kumbaga yung part lang ng population, we will have to first determine this sample size and then distribute them sa mga groups. But in this for equal allocation, hindi natin i-consider yung proportion of a certain group. So all we have to do is pag nakakuha na tayo ng sample size, we just have to divide it equally. So pag nakakuha tayo ng whole number, then that would be the sample size for each group. So in short, the same sila. And always remember, pag nakakuha naman tayo ng value that is with decimal, the rule of thumb is to always round it up. So for example, nakakuha tayo ng 50.5 or 50.2. So ang rule dyan is to always round it up. So magiging 51. On the other hand, for the proportional allocation, it considers the size of each stratum. This scheme is more appropriate in generating more precise estimates for the whole population or universe. So this is also a allocation scheme, but the difference is that consider na yung population size per group. So unlike equal allocation, ang mangyayari ngayon sa proportional allocation, a group with the higher population will also have a higher sample size. So next for systematic sampling, it allows selecting one unit at random and choosing additional units using a fixed skipping pattern until the desired number of samples is obtained. So ang nangyayari dyan, mag-randomize lang tayo isang beses and then meron tayong determine na fixed skipping pattern kung sino naman yung next na ipipick natin as respondent. So sampling interval or yung K is computed as the ratio of the total population over the sample size rounded off to the nearest whole number. A random start S is selected from 1 to K if N is a multiple of the sample size. If N or the population is not a multiple of N, the random start is selected from 1 to N or the population size. Next is the cluster sampling. Again, this sampling divides this universe into groups called clusters. So again, para siyang sa stratified random sampling. But kasi meron siyang grouping factors. But this time, sample clusters will be randomly selected and all units within the sample clusters will be considered. So ibig sabihin, ang gagawin lang natin dito is magpipick lang tayo ng group. So yung group lang mismo ang ipipick natin. At pag nakapili tayo ng group, yung lahat ng respondents doon, lahat ng possible respondents doon will be considered as respondent for our sample. So yung mga hindi mapipick na group ay hindi sila magiging part ng ating study as respondents. The effectiveness of cluster sampling is increased relative to SRS if the units within clusters are as heterogeneous as possible. So next is our sample size determination technique. So Cochrane formula, we have first Cochrane formula for mean. Here we have the formula is equal, n is equal to z alpha over 2 times sigma quantity raised to 2 all over me raised to 2, wherein z alpha over 2 is equal to the standard normal based on desired level of confidence. And again, yung alpha natin is yung level of significance, which usually ranges from, we can use 0.05, 0.10, and 0.01. But usually we make use of 0.05. Next is yung ME, or next is sigma raised to 2. This is variance. And next is the ME, or the maximum allowable error. It specified acceptable difference of the estimate and the parameter for a given level of confidence. Next is the Cochrane formula for proportion. So again, meron silang similarity ng Cochrane formula for means. Now, the difference in here is we will be dealing with the proportion. So magiging formula dito is n is equal to z alpha over 2 quantity squared times p times 1 minus p all over me raised to 2. So again, z alpha over 2 is the standard normal based on desired level of confidence. Ito pwede natin itong makita sa z table. And then we can also make use of Excel using the function, if I'm not mistaken, norm INV. And then ME is the maximum, or P times 1 minus P is the variance. In most cases, P is set to 0.50 since it is with this value that the maximum sample size is obtained. So bakit ba natin gustong makamit yung maximum sample size? Kasi the rule or na kailangan natin consider in sampling is the higher the sample size, the more reliable the conclusion will be. Why? Kasi syempre pag mas marami o mas malaking sample size, mas nare-represent niya yung population. And next question is, why do we choose 0.50? Or why does in most cases P is set to 0.50? Now, kung ilalagay natin siya dito sa formula P times 1 minus P. So, if P is 0.5, so P natin is 0.5 times 1 minus P, that is 0.5. So 0.5 times 0.5 is equal to 0.25. So as stated here, 0.5 will yield to the highest maximum sample size. Why? What if we use 0.6 as P? So 0.6 times 1 minus 0.6, we see that would be equal to 0.6 times 0.4. Magiging equal siya sa 0.25. So kung i-compare natin siya, magiging equal siya sa 0.24. So kung i-compare natin siya kanina sa 0.25, mas lamang ang 0.5. 0.5 times 0.5 is 0.25, while 0.6 times 0.4 is equal to 0.24. Next, again, ME is the maximum allowable error, which is specified acceptable difference of the estimate and the parameter for a given level of confidence. Lastly, we have the Slovin's formula. Actually, itong Slovin's formula is stated by some researchers. This Slovin's formula is sometimes questionable. Kasi ang nasasabi nila, masyado daw maliit yung nakukuha ang sample size in this technique. Now, last time when we conducted the training on July 19 up to 21, one of our speakers, Professor Hilaria Barzawal, stated that Slovin's formula is a valid sample size determination technique as long as we know what the population size is. Bakit? Kasi in our formula, N is equal to big N, or the population size, all over 1 plus big N. Again, this is the population size times ME quantity raised to 2. So, ibig sabihin, ang isang requirement dito is we must know the value of the population size. So, when is it appropriate to determine the adequate sample size for a given study? When the study intends to collect data from only a subset or a sample instead of the whole population, and the intention is to validly generalize the results based on the sample to the target population. Next, when a probability sampling design will be used to select the sample. Next, when it is very important to derive precise estimates of the variables or parameters being studied based on how the results will be used. So, general comments about sample size determination. Sample size determination is a complicated issue which needs a lot of first statistical inputs, practical considerations. The formula for sample size determination differs according to type of study design, type of sampling design, type of variables being measured, study objectives, number of groups being studied and compared. So information needed for sample size determination when estimating a mean or a proportion. The anticipated value of the parameters to be estimated in the study, example, the prevalence of the disease, the average or mean grade of students given a particular intervention, and etc. Possible sources of this value are, first, previous studies or past records. So usually we can, dito pumapasok ang ating, o dito natin nagagamit ang ating RRL, Review of Related Literature. So it plays a big part in this section because dun tayo nagkakaroon ng idea that or mga literatures that are related in our study. At dun tayo makakaroon ng possible values na pwede natin gamitin as basis for sample size determination. Values derived from the pretest or pilot phase of the project. So what is pilot phase or pretest? A pilot phase or pretest is a test that is conducted before the data gathering itself. So ibig sabihin dito, magde-data gather ka, but you'll conduct it to a limited number of respondents. So this is not the yung data na mga gagather dito is not the exact data or not the values that will be needed for the actual data gathering. So this is just some kind of test kung paano ba kung gumagana ba yung questionnaire mo, kung ano ba yung possible na maging values nito, and dito pwede tayong makakuha ng idea on the for the values that we can use for determining sample size when estimating a mean or a proportion. And next is an expert's opinion or an educated guess. Next is conducting this study in two parts. So third, information needed for sample size determination when estimating a mean or proportion, the degree of precision required for the resulting estimates or the margin of error. This can be expressed either in absolute or in relative terms. The value of an acceptable margin of error will depend on the magnitude level of the parameter being estimated, how the results of the study will be used, available resources for the conduct of the study. So ano nga ba ang margin of error? So ang para makita natin to, ang margin of error, ang mas magandang margin of error usually is or actually is yung lower value. So for example, pag naglalaro kayo ng dart. So syempre meron kayong target sa gitna. Now we have syempre pag nilaro mo ito, your target is to get the dot at the middle of the dartboard. So mangyayari diyan, pag lumalayo ka, mas lumalayo din yung or bumababa yung score mo. So mas hindi siya or bumababa yung accuracy accuracy level ng paglaro mo dito. So in terms of margin of error, pag nilagyan mo siya ng mas malaking value of margin of error, the possible estimated values may possibly deviate from the true or the estimating or the parameter that is being estimated. Pag nilitan mo naman yan, mas yung possible values na ma-estimate for the parameters that is being estimated will become nearer with this value. So next, the desired confidence level. Standard levels used are 90%, 95%, and 99%, with 95% being the most commonly used. So ano nga ba itong confidence level? Again, gaya nga ng nasabi natin kanina at yung nabanggit din ni Sir Julius, in statistics and or in our life, walang perfect. So in statistics, as stated din kanina, we deal with real life phenomena. So definitely, kahit gaano man natin i-plan ito, yung gagawin natin, we will have to expect unforeseen circumstances upon conducting our study. So kahit gaano man tayo magplano ng mabuti, meron yung mga mamimit natin na possible na factors or circumstances na makaka-affect sa ating data gathering and process in our study. So dito, ano nga bang confidence level? Since walang perfect or there's no perfect in this world, ang ating lang or ang ating possible lang, or we cannot have 100% confidence level. Kasi we will actually have, since we are not perfect, meron tayong aasahang mistake, or slight mistake in conducting our study. So here, mapapansin nyo walang 100% kasi nga walang perfect. So confidence level states or shows how confident you are or on the reliability level of the results of your study. So syempre, habang tumataas yung iyong confidence level, mas tumataas yung chance na or yung reliability ng iyong result. But ang consequence naman ito, if we are to relate this with our sample size determination, pag ginalakihan natin ang sample, ang ating or tinataasan natin ang confidence level, given the fact na ang rule of thumb natin, the higher the sample size, the higher the reliability of the test will be. So pag tinaasan natin itong 99, ginawa natin from 95%, ginawa natin siyang 99%, so tataas siya, definitely tataas yung z-value. Ang mangyayari dyan, tataas yung ating sample size, but the problem is yung efficiency naman. Kasi nga in studies, we must consider two factors. Isa ito ay yung reliability and next is the efficiency. For reliability, again, yun yung magdidepend yun, or isang factor na makaka-affect doon is yung sample size. So the higher, the better. But in studies, we must also consider efficiency. So we must consider time and budget. Now, we can say that sa budget, kahit paano magagawan pa natin to ng paraan. But how about time? Remember, time is irrevocable. So, hindi natin siya pwedeng ibalik. So, dapat, as much as possible, ang i-consider natin dito is yung kaya nating gawin. So, we must balance yung reliability and efficiency of our sample size. The estimated degree of variability of the observations, or the variance or the standard deviation. First, variance is the squared value of standard deviation. So what is degree of variability? Degree of variability is the average, or yung standard deviation is the average distance of a point of the data from the mean of the variable. Next is for the example of, this is part of the example of sample size determination, a proportion using some simple random sampling. So dito, kanina, gaya na banggit kanina, n is equal to z squared. To avoid confusion, dito, z alpha over 2 siya. So z alpha over 2 squared, then p times q, where q is equal to 1 minus p. And d squared is also, yung d dyan is also equal to the maximum allowable error or yung NE. So ito nga po. Again, ito yung mga z value. Now, I want you to bear in mind or always remember, since yung z natin is alpha over 2. So for example, ang given sa atin is 0.05 na level of significance. We must first divide it by 2. So magiging 0.025 siya. Well, originally the z value of 0.0 with alpha of 0.05, ang value niyan is 1.645. Now, since we have to divide it by 2, magiging 0.025 siya, which is equal to 0.975. Yung level of confidence niya is 0.975. Therefore, yung kanyang z value na is magiging equal to 1.96. So, mapapansin nyo dito sa z value dito sa baba, yung table. Yung sa 90%, naging equal siya sa 1.645. Kasi nga, in our formula, we have to divide it by, we have to divide the alpha by 2. So, sa 90%, syempre yung alpha natin dyan is 10% or 0.10. So, 0.10 divided by 2 is equal to 0.05. So, from yung 0.05 na yan, 1 minus 0.05 is equal to 0.95. Now, yung 0.95 na yan, that is it has a z value which is equal to 1.645. So again, P is the anticipated value of the proportion to be estimated in the population. 1 minus P is the complement of P, where P plus Q is equal to 1. So eto, tayong malito dito. Yung P, for example nga, is 0.5. Yung Q niya, 1 minus 0.5 lang, or 1 minus P. And therefore, pag pinag-add mo yan, dapat equal siya sa 1. D, or equal, or also called as the ME, is again the margin of error or the maximum permissible error, which is also termed as the maximum allowable error, is a measure of the desired level of precision for the resulting estimates. So here we have a sample problem in determining the sample size in order to estimate a proportion. In a project which aims to assess, among others, the effectiveness of a post-disaster nutrition program to be implemented in Province X, one of the impact indicators to be used is the decrease in the prevalence of malnutrition among preschoolers in the province. In order to measure this indicator, it is planned to conduct a baseline survey to determine the prevalence of malnutrition among preschoolers in Province X. At the start of the program, a review of nutrition data in the province revealed that the only background data available is the result of a study done in the province 2 years ago, which indicates that the prevalence of moderate and severe malnutrition among preschoolers is 25%. So yung value dito was taken from a secondary data. So ibig sabihin, this value is taken from a study conducted earlier. If it is decided to select a random sample of preschoolers for the baseline survey, how big should the sample size be if the error rate is set to be within plus minus 5% with 95% confidence? Now we can see here a table for the population proportion with specified absolute precision. So how can we determine the value in here? So yung P, nag-i-indicate siya ng proportion. So given dito sa ating example, we have 0.25% or 0.25. So first, we have to find 0.25 dito sa columns. So we can find it on the 5th column. Next, for the D or the maximum allowable error, we would like to set it at 5% or 0.05. So sa ating column naman, nasa pang 5 siya. So let's take a look at the intersection of these two values at mag-equal siya sa 288. So using this formula, the expected sample size would be equal to 288. Dealing with common issues in sample size determination. When deciding on the sample size requirements of a study with more than one objective involving the estimation and or testing of several parameters and hypotheses, the sample size requirement of each important parameter has to be computed and considered. When estimating a proportion whose value is unknown, the common practice is to assume that p is equal to 0.50. Again, 0.50 is or the probability or proportion 0.50 will yield to the or will maximize the size of the or the value for the sample size. The basis for this is the fact that the variance of indicators which are in the form of proportions have a maximum value stated a while back when p is equal to 0.5 and q is equal to 0.5. Again, q is equal to 1 minus 0.5. And hence, will ensure an adequate sample size irrespective of the actual value of p. When the sampling design makes use of cluster sampling instead of pure simple random sampling, the sample size has to be corrected for the design effect. So the sample size for cluster sampling is equal to sample size for the simple random sampling times DEFF. DEFF is the factor by which the sample size for a cluster sample has to be increased in order to derive estimates with the same precision as a simple random sample. In the area of health, it has been shown for most health surveys, DEF is equal to 1.5 to 2, with DEF equal to 2 being a common value used. In order to ensure that the required sample size is reached, a correlation factor or a correction factor for non-responsive or yung mga nakikita natin, napapansin natin missing data is usually applied at the time of sample size determination. This avoids the need for looking for substitutes during data collection, which usually introduces biases in sample selection. The non-response rate varies depending on the survey setting. For example, in urban areas generally have high non-response rate compared to rural areas. Surveys which ask for sensitive questions also have higher non-response rates. But in general, an inflation factor of 10% for non-response has been shown to be adequate in most situations. Therefore, if, for example, the required sample size of a given survey after applying the design effect is 800, then the revised target sample size after applying for the correction factor for non-response will be 800 plus 80. So where did we get 80? Again, yun yung 10% nung original sample size, which is 800. So 800 times 0.10 is equal to 80. And then, pag pinag-add natin yan, 800 plus 80, nagiging 880 siya. So again, as stated above, bakit tayo nag-a-add ng 10%? This is so para maiwasan natin yung mga missing data. So kahit na, for example, compare natin, there are instances, for example, we make use of 800 na samples lang. Now, napansin natin na 80 of these respondents did not answer a certain variable. Ngayon, kung titignan natin, malaking bawas yan for 800. So 800 minus 80 would be 720. So that would lead to a lower accuracy level. Ngayon, pag inad natin itong 800, dinagdag natin ng 80, mas magiging mababa yung risk na matatanggalan o mababawasan yung sample size mo because of missing data. So kung compare natin kanina, if 800 lang ang consider natin, tapos nabawasan siya ng 80, magiging 720 siya. which is basically lower than the adequate sample size. Now, if we add 80, which will be equal to 880, kahit bawasan pa natin yan ng 80, for example, may missing data na 80 na ulit, 80 na respondents, we can still have an adequate sample size which is equal to 800. So, mas safer siya kasi nga nami-meet pa rin niya yung adequate sample size. So, the data collection activities should therefore be planned for a sample size of 880. So, additional considerations in sample size determination. There are instances when the computed sample size is deemed too big relative to the population size. There are even instances when the computed sample size is bigger than the population size. This is when the finite population correction can be applied to determine the final sample size to be considered. The sample size formula after application of the FPC is N sub FPC is equal to N sub 0, where your N sub 0 is the initial sample size computed prior to application of FPC, and yung NFPC natin is the computed sample size after application of the finite population correction. Now, the formula is equal to N sub 0 all over 1 plus N sub 0 minus 1 all over big N. So, kailan nga ba nangyayari to? For example, yung total or we have students in the classroom. So, ang total na students doon is 30. So now, gusto nating mag-conduct ng study and then nag-identify tayo at trinay nating mag-identify ng sample size. Now, instead of lower than 30 yung makukuha natin as sample size, naging 40. So since 40 is much larger than the population size, siyempre hindi natin magagawa yun. Kasi lagpas na siya dun sa maximum number. So all we have to do is to adjust it by using the finite population correction or yung FPC using the formula stated in here. So that's all for our submodule 2. And lastly, for our submodule 3, we are to conduct or to discuss the validity, reliability, and proper data tabulation of survey questioning. The instrument. Instrument is the generic term that researchers use for a measurement device. So for research completed, we have tally sheets, and for the subject completed, questionnaires. So we can see some difference with these two columns or with these two instruments. So pag yung subject completed, ibig sabihin yung questionnaires mismo na yung questionnaire na sinagutan mismo, yun pa lang yung values within that or yung raw data, yun pa lang yung under the subject completed. For the research completed, we have to tally sheets or we have tally sheets. Tally sheets are the sheets used for organizing yung mga values, yung mga data na gather natin from the questionnaires. So it is more organized than the questionnaires. The selection of instrument of data collection tool must be balanced on the following: resource of availability, credibility, analysis and reporting, skill of the evaluator. Things and reminders that must be considered for data collection tools for the questionnaire and tabulation sheet. First, usability. It refers to the ease with which an instrument can be administered, interpreted by the participant, and scored or interpreted by the researcher. So, for example, students are asked to rate a lesson immediately after class, but there are only a few minutes before the next class begins. Next, students are asked to keep self-checklists of their after-school activities, but the directions are complicated and confusing. So, and lastly, teachers are asked about their attitudes regarding school policy, but some questions are worded poorly, which results in low completion rates. Next thing that is to be considered, na isa sa pinaka-important dito is the validity of the questionnaire or the instrument. The extent to which an instrument measures what it is supposed to measure and performs as it is designed to perform. It is measured in degrees. It involves collecting and analyzing data to assess the accuracy of an instrument. First, external validity is the extent to which the results of the study can be generalized from a sample to a population. On the other hand, internal validity refers to how accurately the measures obtained from the research was actually quantifying what it was designed to measure. This validity is established when an expert individual reviews the instrument and concludes that it measures the characteristic or trait of interest. Content validity refers to the appropriateness of the content of an instrument. Lastly, reliability. It refers to whether the instrument consistently measures what it is intended to measure. There are four major estimators of reliability: inter-rater or observer reliability, test or retest reliability, parallel forms reliability, and one of the most popular or used measure of reliability is the internal consistency reliability. So 5 steps involved in developing and testing an instrument. First, we must consider the research background, instrument conceptualization, format of the data tabulation and data analysis, establishing validity, and establishing reliability. So here we can see a framework for the steps stated above. So for the first step 1, we can see at the left part, we must consider the background. So for example, in here we have target audience population sample. We must consider also the purpose and goals, objectives, research questions, and hypothesis. Next, for step 2, the conceptualization part, we must generate statements, questions, items, and we must be able to know and determine which are the independent variable, dependent variable, and the NV. And here we can also consider knowledge, attitudes, perceptions, opinions, facts, behavior. For step 3, or the format and data analysis, we must identify appropriate scales of measurement. So this part, ito yung importance nung pinakita natin kanina sa module 1, sub-module 1, yung different levels of measurement and type of variables. So dito, kailangan natin to para ma-identify na natin yung proper analysis. Why? In statistics, there are several statistical tools and analysis. But sometimes, or most of the time, napapansin ko rin based on experience that researchers, especially yung mga nagkakandak ng thesis, they tend to use some statistical tools without even considering the assumptions that must be met. So minsan, for example, sa categorical variables, since numerical siya in a way na meron tayong labels doon. For example, sa Likert scale 1, very low, 2, low, 3, medium, 4, high, and 5, very high. Ang ginagawa nila, since may label na 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they make use of parametric tests. When in fact, parametric test has or must consider assumptions, and these assumptions must be met before we can apply this statistical analysis. And then next is the questionnaire format. And then after yung questionnaire format natin, we have to conduct the validity or test for the validity. Now for the validity part, for the questionnaire, we usually establish validity by seeking for the help of panel of experts, readability test, IRB, field test, and then we have to make revisions on the readability test. So in a research kasi, well, there are different fields that can be conducted or that can be of interest of different researchers. So, syempre, in different fields, there are different principles also. So, hindi natin for example, there's a big, sabihin na natin may big difference with courses or researchers involved in, let's say, agricultural engineering and in, for example, sa ating researches in vet med. So makikita natin may difference dyan. So anong importance ng validity? So we must be able to put or identify yung mga proper variables that must be considered in order to answer and obtain our objective. So we must go to the proper, or we must seek for the help of the experts on the certain field. Ngayon, we may rely on, for example, since we are talking about statistics in here, we can rely, or we can also seek for the help of a statistician. But we must also consider that syempre yung statistician, mas familiar siya for statistical analysis. But for the concepts of the research itself, for example nga sa veterinary medicine, mas malaki pa rin or mas marami pa rin yung alam ng mga experts on that field. So to be able to validate that the statistical tool properly, mas maganda rin na merong or mag-seek for help tayo from experts of the field of the study. And lastly, we have to establish reliability. So again, we must conduct pilot tests for reliability. We run alpha revisions and rerun alpha. And then instrument ready for mailing. So what do you do with pilot test? So usually dito, ang kinakandak ko ring test is yung Cronbach's alpha, which tests for the internal consistency of the items or the variables within a factor. So in a questionnaire, kung mapapansin natin, meron yung mga factors with the set of questions. So ano nga ba itong ginagawa or tinetest ng internal consistency? Now, the point in here is, kunwari meron tayong isang factor. For example, is level of awareness on the effect of COVID or on the effect of COVID-19 vaccination. Now, the point is meron tayong 5 questions in there or items. Now, 4 of them are sabihin nating valid na question for that factor. And the last one is parang ang question nung last one na item is about ang question naman niya is about sa SARS, which is actually a different sabihin nating problem or virus that has or that happened or come nung anong year ba yun, nung for the past years. So ang nangyari dyan ngayon, since SARS ang kanyang tag or yung kanyang na-identify dyan, yung item na yon, yung last item, ang tinitignan niya is yung ang kanyang tinitignan niyang concept is yung sa SARS. So do you think that 5th item is does really belong within that group of variables under a certain factor? So that yun yung tinetest ng ating yung tinatawag nating Cronbach's alpha for the test of internal consistency. So ang ginagawa doon, titignan natin kung lahat ba ng mga items within a factor that is being tested ay talaga bang may contribution or related ba doon sa factor. So that is for the reliability of the questionnaire. Systematic development of the instrument is important to reduce measurement errors. Well-crafted conceptualization of the content and transformation of the content into questions is essential in minimizing measurement errors. So dito, I've made a simple example para mas ma-visualize natin yung difference between validity, reliability, and usability. Now, For example, in basketball, for validity, we have a basketball team needs a well-planned strategy for a game. So we have our question is, who is the best person who can provide this strategy? So in in a basketball team, usually, anyone from the team can give a plan, can suggest a plan. But yung expert talaga dito is yung kumbaga yung nagli-lead with the plan is the coach. The coach is the expert that instructs players in the fundamentals of a sport and directs team strategy. So dito, may compare natin siya in statistics as the panel of experts for the validity of the content of the questionnaire. Next is reliability. A team has a starting lineup. All of them are all star players and considered as top players. For example, nagsama-sama sila Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, the late Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, and Shaquille O'Neal. So a lot sila is magagaling, di ba? Sila ay considered as top players in NBA. Note, basketball is a game that needs a good team chemistry. Question, is the starting lineup of the team, no matter how good each player are, good enough in working as a team? Do they have a good team chemistry? The best starting lineup must consist of players that can play as one to be able to have a higher level of team chemistry. So dito pumapasok yung kanina na nasabi natin or nasabi ko na for the reliability of the questionnaire, it deals with the internal consistency of the items belonging on a same or on a one factor. So nangyari dyan, if this 5 items are related and from each other at kumbaga sila ay connected and talagang nadidiscuss or naka-question nila yung or na-elaborate nila, nakapibigay sila ng items that are connected from the main factor, then it is a reliable or a reliable questionnaire, set of questions. Now, pag merong problem with one of them, we must have to make adjustment. So kailangan nating tanggalin yung or kung ano man yung pwedeng increase ng level of reliability. Kailangan nating mag-adjust by removing or excluding the items that are not necessary in order to increase the reliability level. Lastly, for the usability, the team had a perfect starting lineup, a good game plan, and a good chemistry among the players. Question, will the game plan work out for the whole game? How long before a player gets tired? A team must always consider possible unexpected circumstances. That's why it is important to make proper adjustments to be able to handle these cases. So kahit gaano man kaganda yung ating plan or kung ano man yung or kung maganda man yung team chemistry within a group of, sabi natin sa may questionnaire natin, we must still consider it the usability of the questionnaire. For example, kung magkakandak tayo ng test or ng survey sa isang tribal group, for example sa isang place na wala akong masabi kung ano bang klaseng tribal group, for example. Basta it is a tribal group and they are all indigent people. So, ang question, are you going to use a survey questionnaire na naka-English siya or yung kanyang language is or it utilizes English language, or are you going to use Filipino? Or since indigent sila, kailangan mo bang i-adjust ito in such a way na yung magiging statement dito or yung questionnaire is calibrated with the dialect of the indigents para maintindihan nila at masagutan nila ng maayos. So for data tabulation, again, these are the type of variables. Identify the type of variables. For continuous variables, the exact value is directly tabulated. Specify the unit being used. Example, age, for example, years, weight in kilogram for the variables and do not include the units of measurement per data. So for example, pag nag-tabulate ka na, kung sumagot man yung mga respondents mo sa questionnaire nila na merong kunwari 1 year old, nalagay nila yung word na year old. Ngayon pag ita-tabulate mo na siya, since naka-specify naman na yung variable na age, and nakalagay naman doon na yung lalagay na values doon is in terms of years. You don't really have to write or you must not write yung word na years. Just have to put the number or yung value. For example, 5 years old yung sinulat niya, just place 5 under the variable age. Next is for categorical variables. Legends consisting of numerical values with labels are defined. These numerical values are the ones tabulated instead of using the string data. This process is done in order to avoid mistakes in data tabulation, especially when statistical software is used. So dito sa categorical variables, again, we have two level of measurements, diba? For nominal, we have example is gender. Walang weight or walang mas nakakalamang. Now, para mapadaling ating tabulation, ang gagawin natin is we can make labels for each group. So we can say 1 is equal to male and 2 is equal to female. This is important kasi usually if pinapasulat natin sa isang questionnaire, minsan kasi may mga questionnaire na imbes of check mo lang yung gender, sometimes meron yung pinapasulat lang if male or female. So ang nangyayari dyan, or in the organizing of data mismo, data tabulation, may mga times nang ginagawa is sinusulat mismo in string form yung nag-gather na data. For example, male, female, gano'n yung sinusulat. Now, ang pinakamagandang gawin dyan, instead of writing them na gano'n, para hindi na rin tedious yung ating work, is to give a label. For example, 1 is equal to male and 2 is equal to female. And then put it on the tabulation sheet by specifying the value. Kung male, lagay mo lang ng 1. Kung female, lagay mo lang yung 2. Para maiwasan din natin yung mga, or para ma-read siya as numerical ng software. Kasi if we are to write the values as strings in software when we use statistical software, the statistical software is actually case sensitive siya. So pag nilagay mo siya as, for example, male with a capital M and meron ka rin nilagay na male with small m, those will be different. Those will be treated as two different values with truth or two different categories. That is the importance of using legends consisting of numerical values with labels that are defined. So we have reminders in here. For data tabulation, always bear in mind that you are transposing the raw data gathered into an organized form as a preparation prior to data analysis. Missing data must be left blank. Take note, missing data must be left blank. Do not substitute a different value. Example, most of the time, researchers substitute a value of 0 to missing data. 0 is not equal to missing data. This will affect the accuracy and precision of the results. Don't worry, these values will be indicated when statistical software is used. So for example, we have 5 students. Tinanong natin yung age nila. For example, si student 1 is 10 years old, 2 is 4 or 6, and then si third ay 7, si fourth nakalimut or di niya nalagyan. And then si 5, si fifth student, naging 6 din siya, 6 years old. Now, pag isa-substitute natin ang 0 dun sa fourth student, ang mangyayari dyan, medyo since 0 is a very low value, pwedeng hatakin niya pababa yung mean ng supposed to be ng age ng mga students. So mangyari dyan, ang dapat gawin dyan, since fourth value is blank and it is a missing data, we must leave it blank. And next is the invalid data. Again, invalid data must be left as it is. Again, do not substitute a different value since this will affect the accuracy and precision of the results. For example, a 5-point Likert scale was used. Then respondent answered 6. So definitely 6 is out of the 5-point Likert scale. So therefore, it is an invalid data. Well, don't worry, these values will be indicated when statistical software is used. Fourth, in order to avoid confusing tabulation, in Excel, divide the data into parts, or in any tabulation form, divide the data into parts with each part having the needed or related variables or indicators describing the part. So example, when Excel is used, you may use separate sheet for part 1. So for example, sa sheet 1, demographic profile. For sheet 2, socioeconomic profile. Sheet 3 is level of awareness. Mas maganda to para mas organized siya. So para pag hindi siya ganun kalaki o kahaba, pag nilalagay mo lang sa isang sheet, medyo mas confusing siya kasi nga mas mahaba yung pag nilagay mo siya as one. Be careful in data tabulation since a slight mistake may lead to a biased analysis. So steps and examples. Define the variables and the specific unit of measurement. For categorical variables or interval variables, define the legends consisting of numerical values with defined labels. Note, the data tabulation is subdivided into groups, namely Part 1, demographic profile. Part 2, level of awareness of the respondents on the possible effects of vaccination for COVID-19. These parts can be tabulated in separate sheets to avoid confusion due to large number of data per sheet. So this one, for the part 1, we have demographic profile. Under this we have variables age, years. So hindi natin kailangan dyan ng labels kasi nga this is continuous variable. So all we need is the exact value. Next is gender. This consists of 2 choices. 1 male and 2 is female. So dito kailangan natin, as stated kanina, para mas mapadali ang ating pag-tabulate, we need to assign labels. So in male, you can say it is 1 and female it is equal to 2. Next, for part 2 is deals with the level of awareness of the respondents on the possible effects of vaccination for COVID-19. So dito, we will have to assign values since we will be using Likert scale. For number 1, it is equal to the very low. 2 is equal to low, 3 is equal to medium, 4 is equal to high, and 5 is equal to very high. So for example, pag magta-tabulate na tayo, we have 3 respondents. This table, we can see 3 respondents. So under ng age, variable age, respondent 1 is 12 years old. Respondent 2 is 32 years old. And respondent 3 is 43 years old. For gender, si respondent 1 ay 1 or he is a male. Respondent 2 has also answered 1. Therefore, he is also a male. Lastly, 3 answered 2. Therefore, he is a female. And for the level of awareness of the respondents on the possible effects of vaccination for COVID-19, respondent 1 answered. So therefore, it states that the level of awareness of the respondent 1 is very high. Second, for respondent 2, the level of awareness is very or low, since it is equal to 2. And lastly, for respondent 3, the level of awareness is equal to 4, which states that the level of awareness is high. Now, these are the possible problems that can be encountered. So again, for example, there are 3 respondents. Now, makikita natin dito, under sa variable age, meron tayong 12. May sagot si 1, respondent 1 and 2, which are equal to 12 and 2 respectively. But then, and for respondent 3, we can observe a missing data. So wala siyang value. So again, as gaya ng sabi ko kanina, if there is no value in that, leave it, or if there's a missing data, leave it blank. Kasi pag sinubstitute natin yun ng 0, it will be computed as, the software will conduct or will treat it as a value. And then, ko-compute yan, kung mangyayari ngayon dyan, since napakababa ng 0, pwede niyang hatakin yung ma-compute namin pababa. When in fact, for example, si respondent 3 is 13 years old siya, but then nakalimutan lang or di lang niya nailagay yung kanyang age dito. So pag, given the fact na 13 years old siya, and pinalitan mo yun ng 0 since may missing data, and we can see that 0 and 13 has a big difference. Therefore, there's a possibility or talagang bababa o magbabago yung kanyang mean. Next is for gender. Again, for respondent number 3, sumagot siya ng 3. Now for the gender, we have only 2 choices, 1 and 2. 1 for male and 2 for female. So nagsagot siya ng 3, which is an invalid answer. So therefore, again, we must leave it as it is. And this will be determined or indicated on the results when the statistical software is used. So here, for age, it can be observed that a missing data exists. Again, just leave it blank. Next, for gender, there was an answer equal to 3, which is an invalid data. Again, do not change the value. The statistical software will detect each value. Now, kung napapansin nyo kanina, parati kong nababanggit na yung statistical or yung importance or yung parati kong nababanggit na instead of using or computing manually, you must make use of statistical software. Why? In real life, syempre if we conduct researches, we deal with the numerous data. Now, if we are to conduct computations manually, mas malaki yung chance na magkamali tayo or mas malaki yung chance na bumaba yung accuracy natin in terms of computation and data processing. So the most practical way of computation or of computing and conducting statistical analysis is using statistical software. And there are several types or several statistical softwares that can be used. For example, is SPSS, or the Statistical Package for the Social Sciences. It has a wide range of analysis that can be used for social and experimental researches, usually described as a friendly user. Since data editors are used for data tabulation or analysis instead of command line interface. So in short, sa mga walang idea pa kung ano yung tsura or paano gumagana ng SPSS, para siyang Excel. Na parang pwede kang mag-copy-paste ng values doon, and then all you have to do is run. And then next is data. It has a wide range of analysis that can be used for social and experimental researches. Usually, it is more flexible in terms of data processing because it can be run using either data editor or yung parang yung sa SPSS, yung parang sa Excel na pwede kang mag-copy-paste, or by using command line interface. Command line interface is yung gumagamit ka ng syntax for coding and running a certain program. And lastly, we have yung R programming language. And this is not the last, actually, this is the third one. R programming language is a free software and one of the most used statistical software. This one, ito ay isang free statistical software but it utilizes a command line interface. So in short, kailangan mo mag-code dito in order to be able to analyze data. And konting kalaman lang po natin dito, bakit nga ba R ang tawag dyan? R ang tawag dito sa programming language na to because, and this is a software, this is a free software. R yung kanyang pangalan kasi yung gumawa dyan are may 3 taong gumawa dyan. At lahat ng names nila ay nag-start ng R. So yun yung reason kung bakit R programming language yung tawag doon. Lastly is the statistical analysis software or SAS. There's a wide range of analysis in one of the most popular statistical software. It utilizes a command line interface. So again, this is like our programming language because we make use of a command line interface. So again, if for the statistical software, since hindi naman lahat tayo, I believe hindi naman lahat tayo is familiar with statistical software. Don't worry, you don't have to deal with it or you don't have to learn and just focus on this part kung nagre-research kayo. You may always seek for the help of expert in this field, for example, statistician or someone na mayroong alam or dito about on the usage of statistical software. So when you ask for this is a valid way or this is still okay na magpatulong kayo sa expert in this field, don't worry, you're still the author of the research and you are just doing an appropriate action to be able to conduct the appropriate plan that you have created. So again, statistical software are used for ease of statistical computation and analysis, and also in tabulation. So that would be all. Thank you and sana marami kayong natutunan sa akin. Again, good morning.
Thank you so much, Sir Arman, for that amazing lecture. We have been refreshed and enlightened about the methodologies in research, and it is really a great honor to have you here with us today. And before we end today's morning session, we would like to ask everyone to please open their cameras for documentation. Once again, may I request everyone to please open their cameras for documentation. We have our documentation team, Karen and Jojo. Please screenshot. Thank you. Karen, sabihin nyo if okay na ha. Thank you. Karen. Karen. Naka-mute ka. Okay na ba? Or ongoing pa?
Okay na, okay.
Okay na? Okay. Okay na daw po. So, thank you everyone. Just a little reminder to our dear participants, especially those who have already done their pilot testing, may I request you to please prepare your research instrument this afternoon so that Sir Arman could help you in the coding of your research, and also maybe we could use it as a sample for the workshop this afternoon. Once again, I am reminding our dear participants, especially those who have already done their pilot testing, may I request you to please prepare your research instrument this afternoon so that Sir Arman could help you in the coding of your research, and maybe we could also use it as a sample for the workshop this afternoon. So see you at 1 p.m. and don't forget your research instruments. Thank you everyone for joining us this morning. Stay safe and God bless. Yes, Sir Steward, Sir Kiano po. Nag-resend po kayo. Sir Steward po. May question kayo, sir. Paging po, Sir Steward, Sir Kiano, are you here with us today? Nasa, ano po ba kayo? Baka na pindot ata niyo. Sige po. Ay, no, ma'am. Okay po. Sige. Thank you po, sir. See you po at 1 p.m. everyone.
Sementara Father, semua boleh kata. Hah? May you live long